Hello there. I'm Park Howell, and welcome to the Business of Story. Imagine how incredible you would feel if you told the story about what you do in the world, and it was not only clearly understood by those you serve, but was so riveting that people wanted to hear and share it. Do you remember how it felt when you had something important to say and no one listened? Kind of pissed you off, right? Well, with me, it's like, you don't even deserve the insight found in my brilliance. Just kidding. But you know what I mean. It kind of sucks to be ignored. But now you can discover the secret of connecting with people and how to move them to action by owning the room with your story. And I mean owning any room. My Story Cycle System is a simple step-by-step guide that teaches you the applied science and bewitchery of storytelling to captivate and convert literally any audience. The complete framework is a better way to communicate because it is based on how our minds make meaning out of the madness of life. And the process has been tested on hundreds of brands and thousands of leaders with mesmerizing results. When you realize that being ignored or dismissed is just a symptom of not understanding the secret to telling a spellbinding business story, and that a whole new way to transfix an audience and compel them to action awaits you, only then is when you will take the next step. You can become that captivating communicator to grow your influence and sales right now. How? Well, start by grabbing your copy of my new book, Brand Bewitchery, on Amazon or Apple Books. To grow your storytelling muscles even faster, combine the insights of Brand Bewitchery with my self-paced, step-by-step online course at businessofstory.thinkific.com. Or sign up for a Build a Better Brand Story Sprint that combines these two resources with live instruction from me. And it just takes 3 weeks. Either way, escape the old way of communicating and experience how good it feels when you truly connect with people. And then start nudging the world in any direction you choose. Now, I just produced that pitch using the 11 hypnotic words learned from today's guest. See, that's the benefit of being a podcast host. I get a head start on the learning by coaxing the wisdom out of my brilliant-minded guests and then sharing it with you. So I just thought I'd put you through that little test. And can you pinpoint those 11 words? If not, no worries, because Jason Linett will reveal each word and show you why they are so effective in your brand storytelling. You might even say they're rather hypnotic.
I'd say so. That complete and step-by-step tend to beautifully go together if you can bring in tested into that as well, which helps you to now realize you're ready to make a decision and move forward with this, which the word realize is kind of like imagine. It's kind of like remember. One's going to the future, one's going to the past. The word realize invites them to look at the current situation that's going on right now and put a brand new filter on top of it by looking at it differently.
Jason Linett is a hypnotic influence expert who helps entrepreneurs and business owners close more premium sales. As a certified professional hypnotist, Jason has dedicated nearly 2 decades to helping his clients harness the science of positive persuasion strategies to quickly and easily rewrite negative thought patterns. He reveals the secrets of hypnotic communication and shares specific business influence systems to supercharge business growth. This isn't about tricking or manipulating people. It's about helping your prospects to ethically sell themselves into your products or services. Jason is the host of the Hypnotic Language Hacks podcast. His TEDx talk, Rethink Rapport, is available on YouTube. He's also the best-selling author of Work Smart Business, a 5-star rated book on Amazon's top 1,000 neuro-linguistic programming list. Oh, I try to say that 3 times fast. Anyways, please welcome to the Business of Story, Jason Linett. Jason, welcome back to the show.
Hey, good to be back a second time here, Park.
Yeah, I'm just fascinated by your line of work, hypnosis. Now, for those of you that haven't listened to show 189, when we had him here talking about how to rewrite your inner story through hypnosis, can you give us the abridged version of how in the world did you get into hypnosis?
So the story began by seeing someone come to my college and do one of those comedy hypnosis shows. And it just fascinated me. And I became ravenous to then go off and learn as much as I could. Made the good mistake of buying the wrong books. I was reading books on hypnotherapy and like personal development as opposed to the stage entertainment, which is where my beginning part of the career was doing programs for schools and corporate groups. So it wasn't necessarily about funny show. It was about what were the problems that their organization was facing and how can we solve that in a creative, if not entertaining way. So I kind of deemed that the stage hypnotist with the hypnotherapist heart, which is where eventually I opened up the office in Virginia, thus named Virginia Hypnosis. The gods of Google opened up and got the website. And then from there, spent many years seeing clients one to one. And over time, started to realize in the shape of the business that the same language patterns that I was using to help my clients, when I took those same language patterns and I brought that into my marketing, into the advertising, that's where things really began to take off. And as I started giving lectures on that, my clients would come in and go, "Hey, I've got this fear of public speaking, but I saw that talk you did on marketing your message. Could you look at my opening?" And suddenly we were doing punch up of their writing. So it's where it's all kind of morphed into this world of not just doing the personal development work, but also refining that messaging. All communication is influential, all communication is persuasive. So I say, if that's the case, let's do it effectively.
What was it about that moment when you saw that hypnotist in college that said, I want to do that?
Okay, this is going to get oddly specific, but for anybody who has seen one of those entertainment programs before, the concern is this is also why you don't see a lot of them on television. Unless you're really there in the room, and even better, you know some of the people who are up there, it's easy to dismiss the entire thing by going, oh, it's probably all set up. I have to edit the story because he asked me to stop using his name. So there's my friend John. You can all hear the air quotes at home. My friend John is a volunteer in the program, and John is an actor. Now, this would be a discredit for most of the audience going, oh, yeah, but John's an actor. He's just playing along. And to my credit, John is no longer an actor. So it's okay for me to now say he was a horrible actor. But in that moment, it was genuine. He was really responsive to everything. And there was no judgment. There was no kind of commenting to the audience. And in that singular moment, I went, wow, this stuff is really real. I've got to learn more. Also, I came from a hobby of doing magic. And the downfall of sleight of hand is that it's based upon a lie. It's based upon tricking people. And the hypnotist never went off microphone. He did everything, and everybody could hear and see everything. And I realized in that moment, this is purely about communication. There's no secrets. It's something that people can learn how to do. It's instead about putting the right words in the right order to effect a change.
So it sounds like it was his crappy presentation technique that sold you on it because you're like, this has got to be true because this guy can't act for beans.
Up until that moment, if I ever saw this guy on stage, it was not good. All of a sudden, he was there and he was genuine and it was real. And I went, okay, there's something to this.
When you started doing your hypnosis and started studying it, was it for personal development? Were you in it because you didn't want to necessarily marry your magic with hypnosis, but you wanted to help people?
I was kind of on the way out from the magic at the point because, and you would know this from storytelling, that oftentimes we run into a flaw of too much exposition, too much detail when there really doesn't have to be there. And think of how most magic tricks would begin. Here is an ordinary pack of cards. And that's not something we normally have to say, but now that I've said it, it's brought your attention to the fact that it's probably not ordinary. They reel out the empty box and show you that it's empty. But then again, what other situation do we have this ornate box and put someone into it and stab swords through it? You know, like you do. So I was on that exit point of wanting something that was more genuine. So the mindset from the beginning, though, was about problem solving. So I would be there in front of a school. What were the issues that the students were facing? And I'd be folding the message of the presentation into that of personal development, character choices, honor systems, making the right choices. I would be in front of a corporate group. And let's say it was an insurance group, and somehow that annual meeting had to have the theme of, hey, look, we've already laid off all the people we're not going to lay off. Your jobs are safe, at least for now. And here's Jason. That was a great introduction, by the way. So it came about to go, how can we convey this message? How can we have them operating more as a team of members and not a bunch of individual contractors fighting for themselves? So always, again, back to what would be the goal of this message? What would be the end result? Let's start with the end in mind and then rewind backwards and make sure all of our points along that system help to reach that end goal.
And that sounds like what a typical presenter would do, but I would imagine as a hypnosis, you're doing it in a very atypical way.
Yeah, so it comes about to go, we can talk about the difference between show and tell. The opportunity to demonstrate something in a memorable way, that to stand up on the platform, let's take the insurance group for a moment, to stand up on the platform and acknowledge that people in the business serve different goals and different outcomes. And it comes down to recognizing that sometimes it's going to be in your better interest to make the referral to another agent within the company. How exciting is that message? Versus here's a moment where it feels as if you're talking to a group of people and it's as if they speak a different language. Well, for the next few moments, something interesting can begin to occur because the guy I'm tapping on the shoulder right now, everyone here has traveled in from quite a distance, and this gentleman has traveled from the planet Mars. And he's going to be speaking in that weird Martian dialect, and it would turn into a comedy routine. Yet it would then turn into the genius of the volunteers going, however, the person over here can easily decipher what he's saying and speak in that language. So what is it that the people in this crowd need to hear about communicating with other team members? They would say, like you do. And suddenly here came the transition. Oh, recognize that we're all winning as we bring more people into this company, whether you close it as the agent or if someone in the office closer to them does it, that means they've now got a local contact. And suddenly now here's that opportunity where from a creative, memorable place, which makes me now talk about Rocky and Bullwinkle, the reason why a lot of us know history thanks to Peabody and Sherman. Get them to laugh and then invite them to listen. Rather than just bash people over the head with the message, we can use the metaphor of the experience to then guide into the messaging. So now the idea actually sticks.
You're creating a new world for them. In
Exactly.
one case, the Martian world or Rocky and Bullwinkle, and you're trying to get them out of the world they're currently in and get them to imagine something else and participate in that. And I guess as that Martian is going blah, 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 it's just simply giving a platform for their colleague to say what's on their mind.
That's true, yes. And it's where, even as nowadays it translates over to working with business owners one to one, we've removed the comedy routine aspect of it to instead sit down with someone and ask, what's the decision that you want someone to be making in their mind? What's the story you want them to be telling themselves, even before you then pivot and go, if it's consulting, it's this many sessions over this amount of time for this price. If it's a product, it's access to these specific materials, rather than getting caught up in the nuts and bolts of the offer, which we absolutely need to hit. It's instead deciphering down, what are the epiphanies, what are the discoveries, what are those shifting beliefs that a person ought to have. So by the time we then make the offer, they're ready for it.
And that's where your words come in. And why you're back here on the Business of Story, because you and I chatted on your brand new show, by the way, a great, great podcast, Hypnotic Language Hacks podcast. Congratulations. You just launched that at 3 weeks ago?
That came out about a week ago at the time of you and I chatting here today. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like you're already getting some great response to it. In it, we talked about these 11 words. And I know there's more than 11 words, but
Yes.
you have a really terrific video out that I recommend all of you go and check out. And it's the 11 secret words that sell video. I watched it again. And when we were talking about it, I said, this would be a fabulous subject for the show because we talk about storytelling over and over again. This is what, show 282 or something like that. And we only a couple times have hit on the actual content or words that really make a difference. So I want to bring you back because first, when I look at these words, I probably have the same reaction a lot of people will. Can't be that easy. They're so basic. There's nothing fancy about them. They can't possibly work. As I sometimes hear when I teach the and, but, and therefore structure, the 5 primal elements of story, it's too basic. It can't possibly work. But in your video, you also say, these are very powerful, so use them for good and not evil. And what I would like to do is let's go through that list. And if we have some other words that you'd like to share in there as added bonus vocabulary, that would be fantastic. But what I would like to do is cover the word. Why does it work? And do you have an example of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's kick off with the word that was inside of what you do. While we're making use of story in a business context, we probably wouldn't stop and use the 4-word phrase once upon a time.
It'd throw you out.
Exactly. Yeah. Unless you're at a preschool, in which case, game on, you're good to go. You found your right audience. So to recognize what's another reframe of that, what's another word we can possibly use? And it comes down to one simple word, which would be the word imagine. By asking someone to imagine, what you're really doing there is inviting them to create, inviting them to manifest something new within their mind. So chances are, as someone's in a buying decision, as someone's in a shopping journey, they're sorting their decisions based upon things that are either familiar or that are different. And we can respectfully interrupt that cycle by instead inviting them to imagine. So here's an example of someone I was talking with the other day, that he's a personal trainer. And there's a beautiful problem that he was facing even inside of his process. This person had already hired him, and yet now he's teaching them specific exercises. He only meets with them twice a week, but now it's on their time to go back and make use of the exercises to get even stronger and more flexible. And the problem was they weren't doing it unless he was in front of them, which one solution might be book more time with me. His goal was to get a better result with his clients. So I wonder what would happen if you could imagine how you're going to feel the rest of the day when you're doing this more consistently. What would that create for you? And the power of that moment was by inviting them to imagine. He was inviting them to do something a little bit different here. I call this product pacing, which already there's a bonus, which would be that we have future pacing, which is a hypnotic term about pacing someone into an outcome that hasn't yet happened. Future pacing, pace them into something in the future. Product pacing is similar to that because what we're doing is we're inviting someone to engage in the process, having already made the decision to be in the process. So rather than sell the decision point as to, yes, I want this, or no, I don't, instead, sell them onto the first step of what they'll be doing once they're already inside of it. So imagine how you're going to feel as you're making use of this exercise each and every morning. It only takes a few minutes. For that to have happened, they either had to first book him or already be working with him. So imagine, invite someone to what we call in hypnosis to bypass that logical, critical part of the mind and pace themselves into a future reality, which because you are engaging in that conversation, the difference is now that's now being linked back to you.
And that logical, critical part of the mind, is it binary? Yes, no, I will buy, I won't buy, on, off, and you're trying to get them out of that into more of a nuanced vision of what their future could look like, and now they're buying with more emotion?
I like that way of looking at it. I tend to say anytime we can take our language out of the binary. So rather than going, if it's as simple as sharing a resource with a client, hey, can I get your email address to send you this? No. As opposed to, what's the best email address I can send that to?
Or imagine how great you are going to feel when you read my expertly written email.
There you go. I like that. let me write that down in the meantime.
Yeah. A little bonus feature there.
The power of ambiguities. Just simply imagine the changes you're going to create with these 7 steps to make a better video. And the beauty of that is inviting that person to then fill in the details for themselves. As I talk about influence and hypnotic persuasion, the strongest influence are not the words that you say to somebody. It's instead the representations that they create in their own mind as a result of your words. And that's exactly what the word imagine can satisfy for you.
Now, a quick little rabbit hole, the power of ambiguity. Really fascinating. You've got me hooked here, Jason, because in storytelling, we're always talking about the power of story is in the specifics. So the more specific you can be about something, they can picture it and ride along. But if I understand you right, the power of ambiguity in your mind is to get them participate in the story and let them fill in the blanks emotionally. So you get them out of the binary mind of yes or no into, that's interesting. That could be, that just might work.
Well, it's the power of the ambiguity as well as the power of actually interacting and listening to the person. So let's assume it's a client who is a business consultant, a web designer who wants to bring in more clients, perhaps. The mistake that I could make would be to say, you can book more clients. The mistake I could make would be double the number of clients that you bring in each year, because that might be their goal, in which case we now have rapport with the mind. We're going to continue down that route. But then again, if that's not their goal, here's someone I just worked with recently that, as he put it, he goes, I am seeing so many people. I am working so many quick overnight jobs that really, I think I just want to have 10 clients this year. I want to have 10 people and just design everything from the ground up, to their email headers, to their business cards, to their websites, to their funnels. Just give me 10 people to pay me a premium where I did everything, rather than, I satisfied them by building a business card, but in the previous career, their website didn't look like that. I want to build something more cohesive. So the power of the ambiguity is to simply use a phrase such as, and as you consider this idea, think about the changes that's going to make in your business. We pause for effect to give them that moment to create, to manifest within their own mind. Now invite some interaction. What would that be like for you? What specifically does that bring to mind? And the benefit now, they're going to be feeding us their buying decisions. They're going to be feeding us the criteria that's important to them, which chances are in our story bank. We have examples of clients that we've worked with over the years, and now I know which stories to call, which perfectly leads into the next word, which would be the word remember. So imagine invites them to create something out into the future. Remember invites them to make that sort of, I'm going to the imagery of the arcade game with the claw that goes down and hopefully picks up the toy. You're a winner. You got the toy. The word remember invites them in a regressive way to go back and source something else. Now, this is where you, as the business owner, have a decision to make, because is there going to be a benefit to bring back some sort of positive emotional state to kind of build that sort of landscape, to paint the picture in their mind of emotion before the next step of your process? What if we can use a positive experience from their past to elicit that positive, confident, self-assured state before then presenting our program, our service, whatever it would be, where now we have them in the ideal state of mind? Versus instead, we could invite them to remember a time where maybe they hired somebody and the project did not go so well. Now we've created that slightly negative foundation, that negative hue on everything, which may be a moment, if appropriate, to talk about the other decisions they can make that are not your business or service.
So you could play off either a negative or positive emotion in that remember, depending on what you're trying to have them attach that to for the future. And how much discovery do you have to do, or can you do that on the fly when you're just listening to someone, you understand what their pay points are and say, well, take me back to a time when, and then play off of that?
That's one great way of doing it. I tend to find this can either be a challenge to people or it could be a benefit to people. So often when you ask a direct question, they answer with story. How would you like things to be different in your business? Well, about 5 years ago, we hired a company, which this is going somewhere interesting. It's not what you asked, though. So recognize that people sort the world through their own stories. They sort the world through their own perceptions. So once we start to draw out some of these examples, and it starts to become really clear to us as to why we're having that conversation on that specific day, why someone's interacting with us, just simply by listening. We're either how do you invoke change in someone is a cool question. Turns out there's always a stick involved. You're either poking with the stick to move away from pain, or you're dangling a carrot at the end of the stick to move towards pleasure. So by listening to their language patterns, by listening to their models of the world, we're going to figure out if they're one of these people who makes decisions away from pain or toward pleasure. And we can now use the word remember to draw out whatever what we call meta pattern is in their mind, whatever that phrase is in terms of how they're moving towards their decisions.
So you've got imagine and remember, future and past to get them future paced or product paced into something else. What's your next word?
Let's use the word discover now, that the word discover invites someone to look at something brand new. The word discover invites them to look at an existing set of criteria and find something different about it. That so often, and there's a powerful word that brings this all together at the end. There's a cliffhanger, but it's the opportunity to invite someone to look at something and say, discover the choices that you can make, discover the possibilities, discover the new ways you can take your business as a result of XYZ product or service. So discover is a word that kind of like imagine invites them to create, invites them to peel away the layers and see what else is inside. And the beauty of all of this would be that I think back to Park, you know what Mad Libs are, right? Okay,
Yep.
yeah. Mad Libs, for people who don't know it, it's like a kid's game where on page 1, there's a bunch of empty blanks. Name an adjective. You would write beautiful. Name an animal that lives in a jungle. Monkey. Name a sport. Racquetball. And you turn the page and you've got to now enter these words into that story. And if, I believe the example that is what my 7-year-old son tries to write on every single blank. Fill in your imaginations. You're exactly right, Park, for guessing whatever you guessed in your mind. So we can look at this and start to write our languaging, write our copy on our websites, in our messaging, in the opening segments, let's say, of a webinar, to start to, again, ask ourselves, where do we want to take our viewer on this journey? And how can we help to get them there? So to discover lets them look at criteria from a different filter that was already there.
So let me ask you, we'll go through the rest of these here. These first 3 seem like just sales words. You see them everywhere. People use them all the time. From your experience in hypnosis and so forth, why are these so powerful or empowering to our customers?
Oh, I love that, because we're letting the process become their own. I think we catch ourselves in a pattern of using things because we're told we're supposed to. Why is it that most businesses are on social media? Because they think they're supposed to be, and they're doing so without any specific strategy to instead understand where the word is going to take us. So from a hypnotherapeutic standpoint, let's take the example of a person with a fear of flying. And we'd use the old term that they just need to trade out a trance state, which there's a lot of jargon. Trance, if we want to simplify the word, is that moment where the internal story carries more meaning than the external reality. So I'm sitting on the airplane, and logically, I can hold on to the reality that I know I'm safer up here than I was driving to the airport in my car. Statistically speaking, that's just a fact. I know that. And yet, I'm on the airplane, I'm terrified, I'm in the car, I'm comfortable. What we want to do there is interrupt that unresourceful trance state of fear and replace it with the sitting there in a moderately comfortable seat for the next 3 hours. So we want to trade out one state of mind for another. So to understand the how and the why of what it's doing, the same way that there I would be with that client back in the day working on resolving the fear. Phase 1 has to be to interrupt that old unresourceful pattern. Phase 2 has to then be introduce the new pattern. Imagine there you are, start with the end in mind. Imagine there you are stepping off the plane after it has already come in for a landing. Start with the end in mind, begin at the successful completion of the event. As you can remember the step-by-step things you would have done to have gotten there. And now letting the mind fill in the details. So to understand how the words work and exactly what point they use, it's not just because, oh, this PDF I got from some website recommended these words. Now we're working with intention. Now we're working with purpose. And now we have a reason why. And even better, we'd often have a reason to not use a specific word if another choice is better.
You just used word 4, step by step.
Step by step.
Why does that work?
So it comes down to the idea of people are looking to make a buying decision often upon 2 simple factors. They want to create a result faster and easier. And the use of the phrase step by step invites them to realize that there's a system to this. And chances are that's what they're looking for. They're making a buying decision to hire your company, your product, your service because you have a better way of getting there. And if you look at that, that's a factor that can work into hiring a real estate agent, hiring someone to proofread your book, getting someone to redesign a website, even back to the personal trainer. On your own, you could do your best to kind of figure these things out and only get so far. But to make use of the expert, step by step invites the mindset of ease, invites the mindset of comfort and specificity, as opposed to just, yeah, we'll make it better.
And that might even play to a basic survival tendency that we've all been, our ancestors trying to survive the savannah 30, 40, 50,000 years ago, is we don't want complication because we have to overthink and we can't act as quickly with complication. We need to be able to see it, recognize it, and move forward on a decided path that's not going to kill us. So I'm no neuroscientist, but I'm going to play one right here on my podcast. It just feels like it plays to that basic need, that simplicity of basic need of survival.
Well, the beauty of this too is to test it out on yourself. If I just said to you right now, I'll show you a better way to make a video, that may work. And indeed, that's hinting at the next word of better. However, the mind is going to perceive it differently when here's a step-by-step system. Oh, we can combine the words. Here's a step-by-step system to create better videos that invite people to take action even before you make an offer.
Because the anti-story I might be telling myself is, yes, I want a better video, but God, I don't want to have to go through, I don't even know how to do it. And
Right.
It just sounds like a lot of work.
I live by the mindset that frameworks equal freedom. That if here's the 7 steps for this, if here's even the 15 steps for that, the beauty of that now becomes, as long as we don't work from a place of absolutism, because Park, this is important, never, ever, ever use absolutes. Which, yeah, that was an example of an absolute. But
It was a beautiful one.
I know, right? There's an alternate version of that which we'll censor. Everyone who speaks in absolutes is full of, never mind.
Absolute.
Absolutely, yeah.
Mhm.
But the benefit now becomes, if these are the 7 step-by-step methods, if these are the 15 step-by-step premises, as long as the person who is teaching it, as long as the person providing that product or service can now clarify the reality to say, this is a great place to get started. However, if you're on the call with somebody, I teach high ticket closing in one aspect of what I do. If someone's on that call and immediately they say this, oh, no, but my piece of paper that I printed from the website says that's step 6. Well, then by all means, click and drag, copy and paste, start there instead. So the benefit, the strength of all the things we've been talking about here always goes back to what we call calibration. The ability to listen. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and that should be proportionate at times. Because again, the strongest language patterns we could ever make use of in a sales process are what we hear from that other person.
Yeah, I often say as a consultant, you are paid for what is going on between your ears. So use them, for crying out loud.
Absolutely.
Word number 5.
So
Dun,
we
dun,
dun, dun, dun.
dun.
Well, the secret to word number 5 is you're smiling already, I can hear it from here, is the fact that the word is secret. So secret, people are looking for something that's unknown. I love the statistic. Now, the side note to this next phrase is that I came from a family where everybody was a photographer. And somehow that completely skipped me over. I only know how to leave my camera on automatic and get someone else to fix the image later. I can frame the picture so it looks good. But the best-selling magazine in the photography industry every year is the one usually around September. Here are the tools that pros are using. Where somehow the belief system is, if you buy the same camera, you can shoot the photos just as well. And that's coming from someone who once wrote the sales copy for my parents' website, quote, just because they have a nice camera doesn't mean they know how to use it. And I wrote that mostly making fun of myself, and that's what helped my parents book more wedding photography years ago. So secret, let's start with the opposite of the word secret, magic. Remember the story as to why I left that career? Because it was based upon a lie. It was based upon something false. So we could perhaps look at the magic way to do this. Yet somewhere in some people's minds, actually, I deleted a lot of my magic history when I got into hypnosis because something felt false if it was even for an entertainment program back in the day, 12 years ago, to open up with a card trick, which was fake, to then lead into something which was real and based upon communication. So recognize that people are looking to have things revealed to them that they don't yet know. The old thing about stages of learning, from unconscious incompetence to a place where now they're consciously competent, and then they can do it as if they've always known it. So to embrace the fact that they are looking for the secrets, we are matching up with some of that possible neurology that's in their minds, that they're looking for the secrets of Facebook ads to be revealed to them, the secrets of effective videos to be revealed to them. You've now got the person on the phone and they're qualified, but what are these secret step-by-step methods to close that high-ticket program? So to match up, the beauty of this is part of their internal dialogue is that there's things that they don't yet know and they're perceiving them as secrets. So we can match up to that neurology by using that word inside of our languaging.
Jason, you have done a ton of work in leadership coaching and sales, coaching for high ticket items and so forth. So you come from a marketing standpoint and you see a lot of these same words in sales text and books, and you've got the sales trainer up there telling you why you should be using this. But does yours come from that place of really understanding how it's working on our brain through hypnosis and hypnotherapy? Is that what you are basing this off of?
I base it off of, that's one part of it. The other part of it is years and years of guessing and testing, and being that sort of guinea pig in business as well. I am somebody who is a sucker for numbers and statistics. Suddenly, here came the different marketing platforms over the year where the gates opened up and suddenly split testing became an opportunity to go. And this was the beauty of the modern tech era, to go,
A/B testing.
exactly, that I don't have to pretend to have the best answer. The solution sometimes is stick them both up there, see what happens. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the experience where I put secret on something got a better response than magic. The response to inviting someone to imagine something got a better response than, here's the word that the word imagine, back to the first one, avoided, picture, because not everybody's visually oriented. Some people hit a bit of a block with that word. So by looking at the same strategies to help someone to affect a change within their mind and taking those same methods, I'll tell you where this all came from. And it's a bit of an away from strategy. I was speaking at a hypnosis conference years ago, and someone walked by my vendor room table and said, "Oh, it's so nice that you have this hobby of working on your website." And from an extremely arrogant voice said, "I'm more interested in helping my clients." And I had to ask a follow-up question. How many people do you typically serve a month? And the answer was in the single digits, when I was seeing more than that on a weekly basis. So by running the business as Breakthrough Coming as a business, I was able to serve and help more people. This is why I say to people, you owe it to your potential customers to sell what you do exceptionally well. How dare you not make it easy for them to make that decision? And I went to a marketing convention, and suddenly, exactly what you've said, Park, I'm hearing some of the same words, but they were presented almost from that surface structure of, oh, people respond to this. And I could think back to the client when I said, tapping into that secret part of your mind that now reveals, here's a personal change. The cigarettes have actually been giving you something. And now you can satisfy that part of your mind even easier without having to engage in that old useless, unnecessary habit. So by not playing the game of they're going to taste bad, they're going to stink, instead, it was giving you something, letting that secret within the mind that it was trying to satisfy by continuing to smoke become known to the mind. Now they can find better ways to satisfy that. So again, asking ourselves, what do these words actually satisfy, rather than just, hey, this sounds good.
It sounds like we may have had a parallel experience here. So with your study of hypnosis and your work in marketing, then trying it, seeing what works, where imagine works better than picture. So you could see it in the A/B testing, but I would imagine that it also went back to your mind and goes, oh, that makes sense with some of the things I've learned in the past, how the brain works with hypnosis. As I've studied story and tried to really understand how it works, I've had those same aha moments. Oh, I get why this TV spot worked and this one didn't now. And it's that problem solution dynamic or whatever. It's just the way that our brain is wired to make meaning out of the madness of being humans. And then you start connecting, as I call the applied science, to create the bewitchery of storytelling. You essentially are doing the same thing, trying to hook or hypnotize or beckon in your customer through these words, but testing it out to see what works and what doesn't work out in the street. And then I would imagine going back and just understanding why it works on our brains.
Well, that too, it's the power of a good reframe, as we call it, that part of what I do, I work with consulting clients, I work with individual clients. So there's an aspect of what I do, which is still inside of a dollars for hours model. And if someone did not make use of that time, that would be potential time loss or even money loss. So with that being said, some of the people in your audience might be surprised that I do not have a cancellation fee. And that may be surprising to anyone who struggled with a no-show, a client, the person who just simply forgets or just life happens. I don't have a cancellation fee. I have a rescheduling policy. It's the same thing, but the difference is cancellation fee creates the images and pictures in someone's mind of a penalty, of a punishment, when meanwhile, by having an agreed upon rescheduling policy, suddenly someone is paying for that lost time and they're apologizing and thanking me for being so courteous to reschedule them. It's the exact same situation, but the words now take on a different meaning. One of the godfathers of all things hypnosis was the one who was training medical doctors to talk about measurements of pressure rather than measurements of pain. And by simply changing the word, people had a completely different experience.
Absolutely. So word number 6.
I think we're on better. If you're playing along as well. Yes.
Better. And I want to challenge you on better.
Yeah.
Only because the prevailing notion in marketing is better doesn't work because everything is so good. Better is not a differentiator. People want different. He does it a little bit differently. She approaches this in her own way to become more distinctive. Yet I see better now sitting right on your list here. Why does better work?
Which you made me think back to, what's her name? I think the name of the book is Fascinate by Sally Hogshead.
She's the one that really coined that term.
Yeah, that different is better than better.
Correct.
I love that. I referenced her in my book that I put out years ago. So I love the word better, and it comes about in terms of the use of it. So everything is dependent on context. So the use of better, to find a better way to get results on video, to find a better way to present your message. What that does is it's kind of like, remember, it's slightly regressive and it invites them to sort back in their mind and validate why something that they've previously done did not work as well as it was intended to do. And to realize sometimes they just need a better way to do that. I'd tell a personal example in a funny way, which was that I hired an advertising agency to run some of the analytics on Facebook ads. And my moment of pride was that I then looked into my account and I went, I don't know what they're doing, but it's working. I can get an idea as to what it was. And I could see one specific thing. They had a better way to warm up the audience. And what's different about it? Well, it was better. I can validate that in the sense that we were showing some videos to the audience before we ever made an offer. We were building rapport ever before the relationship began. But the word better in this context invites them to make a comparison to what strategies have not yet been working for them as to a strategy that will work for them in the future. This is where I kind of ruffled feathers. Part of my audience are people who are hypnotists, people who are therapists, and people who are counselors. And it's never that we would want to say that the client is coming to us with something that needs to be fixed. Because to say that something needs to be fixed has the connotation that something was broken before. That's the common shared belief on that. I would add the alternative, perhaps, if I may, Park, a better way of looking at it. See what I did there? To acknowledge the fact that
I am in a trance.
I know, right? The fact that they are reaching out to us, the fact that they are reaching out to us means they have identified something in their life is not working, which is a more polite way of something's broken. But because they're reaching out, that means there's another way to do it. There's a better way to get there. And people in a personal change context, there's people who stop smoking on their own, overcome a fear on their own. Suddenly, a major diagnosis may go away on its own in terms of whatever reasons may be around that. But to acknowledge that the therapist, the counselor, is giving a better way to get there again, back to where we started, faster and easier. So, this word, I agree with you. And it fits into this context because it invites the person to make a comparison to previous strategies.
And like the next word, you don't have to qualify better. The next word being
Test it. Yeah, so you're
tested.
exactly
You don't have
right.
to qualify either one of these. You can just throw them out there and say, no, this is actually a better way, and we've tested it to demonstrate this.
I agree with you. I would enhance the word tested to say, I love the premise that you cannot be busted on a claim that you've never made, which is a good way to live your life. The benefit of tested, though, the disclaimer to tested is I want to have some evidence to back it up. So, for example, here's a way that I used to do business networking, where I would open with, I'm Jason Linett, and I'm a hypnotist. No, really, a hypnotist. And that would work. But then again, oh, this may sound familiar. I'm on the right podcast to say this. Instead, if I opened with a story and brought them into a narrative to invite them to feel the feelings of the person whose story that I was telling, make the same discoveries, and then realize there was a, dare I say, better way to get there. I can go back to that time where I could recognize I got some clients, but through my testing, the benefit became by opening with a story, I got a stronger result. And then by taking those stories and putting them onto video, by doing that testing, I got a stronger result even from that. But you're right. The benefit of better or tested are that these are ambiguous words. We don't necessarily have to define exactly what the comparison is to. So it's a tested way to put out videos that actually grab people's attention, which, yes, I can pull up analytics of times that I open with the introduction versus times where I saved the introduction to halfway through the video, invite them to care before you ask them to listen.
And it goes back, I think, to what you had said earlier, that ambiguity to get them into the story. If you stand up there and say, I'm a hypnotist, it's an opinion or an assertion, and your audience is immediately going to cross their arms and say, oh, yeah, hypnotize me then. I'll be the judge of that.
Yeah.
Versus you tell a story that leads them into them. They look at their friend sitting next to them and they go, oh, he's a hypnotist.
Mm-hmm.
They arrive at it themselves.
Well, we reach a barrier in our minds if someone says, I'm good at this, versus the morning networking meeting. Good morning, everybody. Today's story ends with murder. Oh, good. I've got your attention. A woman comes into my office with a deathly fear of bugs. The cicadas are about to fly into the area, and she's terrified of that. She's a high-powered lawyer who backed out of the case of a lifetime because she saw something crawling on the floor. She's also a new mother, and when she saw something crawling up the wall, she took the baby to a hotel and checked in for 2 weeks away from her husband and her other 3 kids. After our first meeting, she squashed a housefly with her bare hand. Who do you know that's ready to let go of a fear? I'm Jason Linett, and I'm an expert in helping people to let go of unnecessary fears. And I haven't even said the H word yet, but they're getting proof, they're getting results, they're being swept up into an experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A true story about the real world impact you make is unbeatable.
Exactly. And bring them into the narrative rather than talk about it.
Okay, we've got 4 words left in about 5 minutes.
Beautiful. The next ones are pretty simple, though we'll spend the most amount of time in the last one. Complete kind of goes back to step by step. The beauty of complete is only use this if it's true, a complete process from start to finish to resolve XYZ. A complete system to produce videos that grab people's attention and have them wanting more from you and watching through to the end.
And does that play off of step by step?
I'd say so. That complete and step by step tend to beautifully go together if you can bring in tested into that as well, which helps you to now realize you're ready to make a decision and move forward with this, which the word realize is kind of like imagine. It's kind of like remember. One's going to the future, one's going to the past. The word realize invites them to look at the current situation that's going on right now and put a brand new filter on top of it by looking at it differently. As you can realize, the reason we're still having this conversation is that you're realizing Words are powerful. And with that, here's the program. Natural pivot, which then from there leads into the next word, next. So I love this because I did one of the first podcasts on the new Hypnotic Language Hacks show exactly on this. In business, we are working effectively. We are even better working ethically if we're only ever selling the next step. Too many people in business are trying to consummate the sales marriage before even the first date. So to invite them to take that next step, this way it's never that hard close, it's never that objection crusher, it's never forcing somebody into something. Instead, well, the next step of this process is to go over to this form on the website and schedule some time to have a chat. We can go from there, as opposed to, again, forcing them into a decision where they're not yet ready for it. So we went rapid fire on those three of complete, realize, and next. My favorite word to bring this all together is the word now. The
Now.
word now is one that does a couple of things. First of all, if all you did was kind of sprinkle and pepper the word now into your everyday conversation, it brings immediacy into all that you're saying. It brings an impulse to focus on what's happening right now. And even better, to ask the question, what do you notice now? What do you think about this now? By asking that question, what do you notice now? It invites someone to look at existing criteria from a different filter. I'll tell you an exact story of something that I did on the phone a while ago. Someone was calling me about my influence program, and he was explaining that he goes, I'm looking at the fact that it's got the words and patterns and it's got the applications. And what I really need is that confidence building stuff at the beginning of it. However, I'm not sure if it's in my budget right now. To which I explained, well, there's a single payment, there's a payment plan, of course. And we chatted a bit. And here was the sequence. I simply fed back some of the language of what he had already said. So, as you mentioned, the words and patterns are what you're looking for, plus the confidence building from the original emotional intelligence work, but also to have the formulas to jump in right away and make use of the specific applications. As you consider all of that and look at the program, what are your thoughts on it now? He goes, yeah, let's do it. Let's set up the payment plan. Oh, wait, the single payment saves me? Okay, I'll do that one instead. Take note of what happened there if you didn't catch it. I fed no other new criteria into the conversation. I made use of information that was already there. Simply fed it back, fed it back, fed it back. And what are your thoughts on that now? By asking that question, it invited him to look inside and find different criteria, different measurements, different ways of looking at existing information, and which at that point, he brought himself over that threshold point of going, yeah, let's do it. And woohoo, already getting phenomenal feedback from the guy. So anytime you find yourself in a place of conflict, a place of concern, a place where maybe someone's in that sort of analysis paralysis, just at the cusp of that decision, feedback something they've said, feedback something they've said, feedback something they've said. And as you consider all of that, what are your thoughts now? It invites them to look at the exact same criteria from a different measurement. And as you consider that question, what are your thoughts on these 11 words now?
And in that question, you are not superimposing your own opinion or thought on it. You're just asking them to reanalyze what they just said.
It's where, respectfully, I've got my own reasons for thinking what I do is awesome, but I want it to be his idea instead. So as you consider all of these reasons, what are your thoughts on that now? There's also power in using the word now in my head, almost as if like an where we're looking for the word. Now, what are your thoughts on it? That's another delivery of it. I tend to go for the standard, well, as you look at that, what are your thoughts on that now? The power of that is, let's say back to the therapy side of things, working with a client. Well, person came in to quit smoking cigarettes. Well, I'm concerned about being around my family. Thanksgiving's coming up, and most of the people in my family smoke. And this is what I would do back in that situation. Well, as you consider the technique I shared with you for the cravings and all the reasons that you came here today, and that really cool experience where this magical thing happened in the session, bring your thoughts back to that upcoming Thanksgiving issue. How do you feel about that now? Oh, I'm going to be fine. I did not introduce anything new. Again, the strongest influence are not the words that we say to our people. It's instead the opportunity to invite their own imagination, their own creativity to connect the dots for us, invite it. That's where people feed us their decision-making structures. They feed us their own models of the world. And it's where we sometimes sound clever in what we do, but it comes back again to that active listening.
Now, where can people learn more about you? This is really, really fascinating.
Yeah, I love this stuff. Thanks for having me on here again. I'd give you two places to go. One would be head over to your favorite place to find podcasts. And after you've subscribed to the Business of Story, which you should be already, subscribe to Hypnotic Language Hacks. We've got new episodes coming out to you every week on every podcast player, also over on YouTube. And I'd point to my Video Influence System, which is a free on-demand workshop with, let's see if I can do this right, 7 step-by-step secrets to discover better ways to create videos. See what I did there? Which
Wow.
will make that easy if you go to jasonlinett.com. And it's 1 N, 2 T's, no extra letters at the end. But then again, I own all the misspellings and they'll point you to the right place. By going to jasonlinett.com, you'll see the option there to grab that video influence workshop, which lets you go through the process and learn a step-by-step way to have people responding to your videos even before you make an offer.
Jason, it's great having you back here. I don't know if you actually placed that suggestion in my mind back in show number 189 that I would have you back here again, but I'm so glad you did. If you had, we reconnected on your new show, which is really a great, great listen. I highly recommend folks go over and check that out. And I've already learned so much from you, not only in this show, but on your website, from a storyteller and a copywriter standpoint. Really, really powerful stuff. This now 11 words that are an arsenal that you can start applying to your work and still continue to tell stories around them. Don't use them as just a default of like their features and functions words, but use these words in your storytelling. And I believe it's going to even supercharge what you're doing out there. So thanks again for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And thank you all for listening to this edition of the Business of Story. If you liked what you heard here, or maybe you hire a passel of copywriters and marketers, or you've got an ad agency that isn't quite hitting the spot for you, share this episode with them. Try the A/B testing with these different words and see, let's test out Jason. Is he right in sharing these words? If you're like me, some of them seem so obvious and so basic that they can't possibly work, but I think that is our primordial brain saying we have to be different, so let's try something else because those are old, they're used, everybody uses them. And I think the argument is the really good writers use them. And that's why we need to incorporate them into what we do. So share this show. I love the explanations he gave with this. If I can be of service to you, come on over to Business of Story. And if you haven't yet purchased your book, Brand Bewitchery, you can get it now on Amazon, Kindle, and Apple Books. So check it out. And until next week, when we will have another amazing story artist right here for you like Jason, remember that the most potent story you'll ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make it a great one. Thanks for listening.
Hey, good job by sticking around a little bit longer, because it's Jason Linett here with one extra, not just word, but a phrase, a pattern of influence you can use right away. I call this the "it's not about that, but it is" routine. Here's the way that it works. Here's the formula. It's not just about X, though we're definitely going to X. It's also about Y, so you can Z. Here are 2 examples of this. It's not just about learning some new hypnotic language patterns, though you are going to learn some hypnotic language patterns. It's also about changing that internal dialogue inside of yourself so you become even more influential, even to yourself. There's an example for what I do. Here's an example from one of my recent clients. It's not just about fixing your credit, though we are going to fix your credit. It's also about changing your entire mindset around money so that you never need a service like mine ever again. So it's not about this, but you're going to get this. It's also about that, so you can achieve this amazing outcome. Put that to use, test it out, and as you consider these words, how do you feel about that now?